Good day, you beautiful souls. Today's video is going to be about meditations on first philosophy by René Descartes, and how his system, and in particular his famous statement cogito ergo sum fits into the CTMU. So we're gonna have a blast. We're gonna start with just essentially a summary of the book, and we're going to go into and we're going to see how the concepts relate to the CTMU. So first he defines his undertaking. This is book day 1. He destroys all his task he sets forth is to destroy all former opinions to rebuild his system from first principles. So he goes into various things which can be doubted. So sense perception can be misleading. Examples of things which it gleans from sense perception, which could be false, is that I'm a being, I have hands, feet, and I'm sitting on a couch. And it's because it's impossible to distinguish dreaming from waking attention. However, dreams are based on general things. Particular things like physics, astronomy, medicine can be doubted, but not really general things like abstraction. So like arithmetic, geometry, logic seem to be more certain. So the next doubt he has is, but about sense perception is, and even, the sciences which seem to be more certain, it's, what if there is no God, but there's an evil demon who has deceived me about having hands, flesh, blood, senses, the existence of colors, shapes, objects, and even about, certain truths in arithmetic, geometry, logic, maybe 2 + 2 actually equals 5, and the evil demon has structured my brain in such a way that I don't arrive at this conclusion. But what he finds, and he goes through a couple more things, but what he finds is that I doubt everything, but one thing remains, that I doubt, and therefore I think, and therefore I am. So that's the thing he's most famous for. Dubito ergo cogito, I doubt, therefore I think. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. So then the obvious question from that is, but who am I? But certainly I perceive, I think, and I exist. So Descartes' Dubito puts the same 3 ingredients of reality at the forefront as the CTMU: perception, cognition, and existence, and the CTMU induces the model from that. So who am I? I am a thing that thinks. Thinking factorizes into various faculties. Thinking factorizes into doubt, perception, affirmation, denial, will, won't. So that's a little wordplay. I have free will, I also have free won't. So will, won't, imagination, knowledge, and so these abilities are powerful enough to distinguish which I've now derived from first principles, are powerful enough to determine the existence or lack thereof of an object external to myself within my own mind. So it does not mean that those things exist in themselves, but it means that I can, clearly think about them. So all the things he arrives at is that all the things we conceive very, very clearly and distinctly are true. But then he questions this, because that's his thing. So how can we be sure that the things that we perceive are real? So Descartes, even though he's gone down this line of reasoning, he does not actually accept this line of reasoning as powerful enough to rule out the possibility of the evil demon manipulating the senses. So to do that, we actually need to prove the existence of God. But these perceptions are not, but a hint that he points out is that these perceptions are not dependent on my will. So if I will that, this this poster. I'm not actually a Kim Jong-un supporter. It's a joke. It says live, laugh, love, so it's a friend got it for me. But I can't will that, you know, this changes into Winston Churchill if I look at it and try hard enough. So the perceptions aren't dependent on my will. I'm sorry, it's a joke. Okay. So it's thus reasonable to judge that extraneous objects, so objects external to myself, project its likeness on me rather than vice versa. I'm not projecting my likeness onto it. So this is also the intuition given to us by nature. But so now the next task, which Descartes sets about, which is arguably the most important, is actually proving the existence of God. And he does that through a few of the classical arguments. So the first of them, which is called the ontological argument, and this was first formulated by Saint Anselm of Canterbury in the 12th century, that it defines God as the most perfect being, and then, you know, obviously the most perfect being, you know, it would be less perfect if it exists, therefore God exists. So that's the most primitive version of the argument, and then that was iterated on by Descartes, Leibniz, Kurt Gödel in the 20th century, who's probably considered the third greatest logician of all time, as well. And then Chris Langan gives the final version in his CTMU, is the most powerful and general version of the ontological argument, is the CTMU. And the most powerful and general proofs of God are all ontological, because ontology has to do with being itself, as opposed to its to, you know, emergent things, like although there are many clever arguments for God and the existence of a deity. But the ontological argument is usually formulated as that the perfect being, so Descartes says, a sovereign, eternal, infinite, unchangeable, all-knowing, all-powerful, and universally existing, universal creator would be even better if it existed, and therefore it must exist, which is actually technically true, but it needs some iteration. And the CTMU does that, so it shows that it would be more accurate to say that the sovereign, eternal, infinite, unchangeable, all-knowing, all-powerful, and universal creator is actually the only thing with the structure and processes to bring itself into existence, and by extension bring existence into existence. And that's why it's called the ontological argument, is because it has to do with existence and being. And this accounts for the genesis of the universe as well as the self-reference of the universe. The universe is closed unto itself, and we'll go a lot more into that in our videos on the CTMU. So Descartes expresses the first iteration of the argument that the idea of God is actually more real than the finite objects perceived by the senses. So the essential point of the ontological argument is that the essence of God at the limit, because God is the most perfect being, so at the limit of what the most perfect being is, that the essence actually implies existence. And this is proven by Chris Langan and the CTMU, and it was suggested by a number of earlier philosophers. So the next is probably the most famous and easy to understand argument for the existence of God, is usually called the first cause argument, although Descartes gives a little different version, but essentially it says, if the effect of something is real, then the cause of that thing is even more real. So the cause of the universe, reductively, is God, and nothingness cannot produce anything, only God can. So this again goes back to the idea that God and the universe self-generate and are eternal. And also, you know, there are various, that there actually has to be a first causer, that because there's causation in the universe, it actually has to regress to an ultimate metacausation. This is what a fellow CTMU creator, Greg Wilford, talked about this in his video, CTMU for Dummies. One of his 11 sentences is God is the metacausation. So God is the higher order causation, which binds the material. God, his syntax is within all elements of within all quanta in all particles. So God is the material cause of the universe. God is the formal cause of the universe. God is the essence, and which implies existence. So God is the form, and we'll go more into this in our series on Aristotle and Plato. God is the efficient cause of the universe. God created the universe, and God is the final cause of the universe. God is the purpose of the universe. So God is the metacausation. God is the first causer. God is that to which all causation regresses. And then and then his third argument, which he presents for the existence of God, is what's usually known as the teleological argument, which means the argument from purpose, or it's sometimes called the argument from design. So the more perfect cannot be a consequence of the less perfect. So there are various perfections in nature, i.e. the richness of biological life on Earth. There's no particular, in the naturalistic model of the universe, the what I call the dead universe model, which is favored by some of the less thoughtful scientists nowadays. In the dead universe model, there's no particular meaning for the biological organisms. We're basically just chemical scum supervening on brute physical processes. But the more perfect cannot be a consequence of the less perfect. So it actually has to regress to the most perfect to account for various perfections. And there's also other perfections, like for example, the Fibonacci sequence occurs in a lot of in various patterns within nature, which is interesting. But this points to a created universe, to a created order, to a telos, to a purpose for the universe. And the creator, of course, of creation is God. And God is actually creator and creation. But so how would I evaluate these arguments? I'd say that Kant was actually right. Immanuel Kant, the great Enlightenment philosopher, was right in saying that these are all different versions of the ontological argument, because of course they are. They have to do with being. But however, he was incorrect in writing them off on that basis. So that it's actually a feature. It's not a bug. Because all reasoning about God and the universe on the global scale will necessarily regress to ontology, being, and being, ontology, which is the study of being and existence, which is why all of these arguments are interpretable, within the CTMU, which is the ultimate ontology. So there are a couple other arguments given. So God, who I conceive of as the perfect being, has no reason to exist if there were no God. So my picture of God has no reason to exist if there were no God. I, who have this idea of God, could not exist without God, for otherwise I would be the author of my own being, and I would have given myself all of the properties I ascribe to God. So this, we wouldn't be localized versions of beings, we'd be globalized versions of beings if we were not created by something higher than us. So another thing is, my life can be divided into an infinite series of states, and it does not follow that because I existed a moment earlier, I must exist now, unless at this moment some cause produces me and creates me anew. So this is, again, God is the metacausation. God is that which couples discreteness and continuity to allow for the passage of time and causation. So this is a CTMU concept, actually, that God is necessary to complete causation. We still have choices as humans, but God actually generates the timelines which we select from, and continuity of experience. So this is very insightful, and this is another version of Zeno's arrow, and the Achilles and the tortoise paradox, which is a more famous thought experiment, also by Zeno. But we won't get into that right now. So Descartes begins from the correct model. He induces a model top down from the existence of God, and bottom up from cognition, existence, and perception, which is exactly the same thing which the CTMU does. However, the model induced is lacking in several important respects. So he has this idea of mind-body dualism, which is, so essentially what he says, there's a great difference between mind and body. So body is always divisible, and mind is always indivisible. I think that's kind of a weak basis on which to basically pry reality into. I think there's a higher burden of proof than that. But the Descartes then sets mind and body, or mind as mind and matter, alternatively, as two non-overlapping magisteria which can be studied without reference to each other. And this is an idea that's prevalent in a lot of science, that we can study matter without reference to mental dynamics, or to what's called in the CTMU the non-terminal domain, which is actually terminating on itself to generate various mechanics, which science says, oh well, that's all there is. Well, actually, that's all there is. Well, no, actually, there's a lot more than that in the structure and processes of the universe. And the CTMU demonstrates that mind generates matter, and in some sense vice versa, and each lends substance to the other. So in fact, these two aspects are so intertwined. Descartes got this so wrong. They're so intertwined that the processing and display, which are analogous to mind and matter, aspects of a particle, which is the lowest division of matter, particle, do not obey the Pauli exclusion principle, meaning that the mental and physical aspect of anything at any strata of existence, from the particle to the universe, occupy the same position in space and time. They are one. They cannot be separated. You break reality when you do that. But overall, Descartes provides a brilliant account of the existence of God and the reality of created nature. But in some sense, we must accept Cartesian doubt while rejecting Cartesian dualism. I say Descartes walked so that Chris Langan could run. He had the basics right, but the in several important respects, his model is lacking. So the job of the CTMU in many ways is to fuse these half models of reality: mind and matter, religion and science, unity and infinity, which is the one and the many, creator and creation. So in this way, the CTMU picks up where Cartesian doubt leaves off. Having induced the minimal model of reality from cognition, we must fuse mind and matter to create a monic theory of everything that generalizes dualism to self-duality. It's all one. It's all, there are these two aspects, but they're aspects, they're not parts. It's one. It's all part of the universal self, this self-duality, and this universal self is God. God is person. And the function, so in generalizing dualism to self-duality, it shows that it's the function of the one God coming to know himself through himself, so his creator, through himself, his creation, which is part of him, for his own purposes, for his own telos. And what greater joy could there be than to know and to understand God? God is one. We are one. All is light. Let the light shineth forth in the darkness. Like and subscribe. Peace.